Hey guys, Tina here, and welcome to my January wrap up. So, I had a really great reading month in January. It's been a while since I managed to read 5 books in a month, and I have to say that I'm really happy that I sort of feel like I'm back in the groove of reading, and it's just a really, really great feeling. So, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the year, reading wise, at least. Fingers crossed that I managed to continue on with this trend. I'm just so happy about that, and I'm so very happy that it's sunny outside. But let's not veer off of the topic. So in January, I managed to read 5 books, which is quite a lot for me lately. Not It didn't used to be a lot. I used to read a lot more, but 5 is great, and I really enjoyed all of the books that I read. So that's also fantastic. And this wrap up should not be long because despite me reading 5 books, they were all part of 2 series that I managed to finish, which is another fantastic feat. And I do not want to spoil them, so I'm not going to go too deeply into, the sequels. Obviously, I will just tell you about basically the first books and how I felt about the sequels, and mostly like things like that. But yeah, so the first 2 books that I read were The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which are books 2 and 3 in the Folk of the Air trilogy. Years back when it came out, I read The Cruel Prince, and I ended up really enjoying it. I had to reread it because it's been a while since I read it. And it's a story about 3 sisters, but mostly we follow one of them. But they're 2 completely human sisters. They're the twins, and one that is their stepsister, and she's part Fae. So they share the same mother, but not fathers. And they live in the human world with their human parents, or at least the twins' human parents. And one day, the Fae sisters' father comes and kills their parents and takes all 3 of the sisters back to the Fae world, fairyland, whatever I would call that. And they then live with him, and he actually takes quite good care of them. And they sort of take him, and even the human girls, they sort of consider him to be their father. And we see them as they're now teenagers, how they have adapted to this world that they're found themselves in. And while the Fae sister sort of struggles and fights against her father, and she wants to live in the mortal world, ironically, the human sisters, the twins, Jude and Taryn, I think it's her sister's name. They want to fit in the Fae world, and both of them sort of are trying to find different paths in order to do that. So while Taryn is very pleasing and wants to fit into society without actually causing any problems, Jude is more of a, well, not necessarily a rebel, but she wants to be almost Fae. She wants to be as strong as they are. She wants to be as good at everything as they are, and she doesn't want to be, she doesn't want to come up short when it comes to comparisons between the Fae and the humans. And of course, she usually does. So yeah, she wants to be powerful. She wants to be a fighter. She wants to be part of their world and be equal to them in a way. And in order for her to do that, she sort of gets entangled into this political intrigue that they have. And well, I find it all very interesting, especially this Fae world, because they are very deceitful. They cannot lie, but they're very deceitful. And well, humans, we can lie, obviously, and they find that fascinating when it comes to these 2 girls. And I really enjoyed it because they're both sort of fascinated, even though they look down upon these 2 sisters and sort of tease them and play them, and then can be really cruel to them sometimes. They sort of also admire them in a way. And yeah, I really like that. So well, I didn't really care for any of the characters all that much because, well, I enjoy the complexity of them. They're all very morally gray. They have ambitions. They feel human. Sometimes I didn't understand their ambitions, and their especially the twin sisters' desire to be in this world, given that they were living with their parents' murderer. And I just didn't, the Fae world doesn't intrigue me that much that I personally would ever want to live in it. Although, I would, sort of visit it because it does sound and is magical. But, I just personally have never desired to actually, if it was real, obviously. I know it's not, but, I do know that. But yeah, I just, they don't even think about the possibility of actually going back to the mortal world. Obviously, they have nothing there. They are not I'm not actually sure. I mean, they seem to be very familiar with it. They seem to cope well in it when they go to to the mortal world. But for some reason, none of them want to live there except for the Face Sister, obviously, which I already mentioned, I think. So yeah, I sometimes, as I said, I didn't understand their ambitions. But yeah, that's it. So as I said, the characters were not my favorite. They were all very shady and morally very gray and did things that, yeah, I mean, they fit their ambitions, obviously, but I just could not condone them. Anyways, what kept really these books interesting for me was the story. The writing is such that it pulled me in, and I just literally couldn't put these books down. I read, I don't know, like The Wicked King, I've read in 2 days, and that one's my favorite out of the trilogy. I think we get most development character-wise and things like that in it, and I really enjoyed it. The Queen of Nothing was good as well, but the ending was sort of rushed, and there was some plot twist towards the end that I just found, I don't know, hilarious or funny, but not all that great. So yeah, all in all, it was a really enjoyable trilogy. I have to say that I will not be keeping these books because I don't see myself ever rereading them. So I guess that's just my how I rate whether or not the books were worth it. Yeah, they're worth reading, but I'm not gonna keep them. So yeah, that's it. So the last 3 books that I read were part of the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. So I've owned the first 3 books for a while, but I never got around to reading them. Obviously, throughout the years, I have heard many good things about the series, but for some reason I never picked them up. And now I did, because I decided to go through my shelves and get rid of the series and read the series that I own and all that. So I decided to start read these books, and I have to say that I really enjoyed the first 3. The first one was maybe my least favorite, but it pulled me in enough for me to want to continue on with the series. So in January, I read Frozen Tides, Crystal Storm, and Immortal Rain, and I really enjoyed all of them. So in these books, they're sort of, have been dubbed the Game of Thrones for YA audience, which, well, it's nothing is Game of Thrones ever, but they're pretty complex. There's a vast number of characters that sort of, we start with a few characters in book 1, and then they get added and added and added, and at some point you have so many characters that you cannot really each of them cannot really get a lot of attention. So that was sometimes not great, but some of the later characters are really enjoyable, and one of them is actually sort of my favorite if I had to pick one. But yeah, and this is a complex story about well, actually, it's 2 kingdoms and 1 land that I don't know what it is, what type of government it has. But it's not a kingdom. But yeah, it's a land of 3 countries, and one king decides that he wants to rule the whole place and just goes to war. And then we have, rebellions and things like that. And there's another empire that sort of gets entangled in everything. And we follow all of these protagonists who are, each is part of a different land. Well, some are, there's more people from one land and things like that. And they struggle, and everybody has their own interests at heart, and they fight against each other, and then they come together because they have interests that sort of bind them together, and then they veer from each other again. And, it just, the story keeps on moving. There's also intrigue, plotting against each other. As I said, there's a bit of romance that I did enjoy for the most part. I was, at the beginning in book 1, I was reading about Magnus, who, from my experience of watching reviews and people talk about these books, he's a very popular character, and I could not understand that in book 1. And throughout the series, then he grew on me, and he was quite enjoyable. He's sort of like a broody type of guy, and yeah, every one of these characters again has their own ambitions, their own interests at heart, and they sometimes, depending on the situation, sometimes they play well with each other, sometimes they fight against one another, and as I said, they're all again rather morally gray, and sometimes they really do not know who to trust because of their past actions, and that hinders their furthering their relationships and trusting each other. And yeah, so all in all, while they're fighting, there's actually something else going on in the background of the situation that they were not even aware of. And I think we as readers get aware of that. Not necessarily in the first book so much, but later on in the series, there's actually another reason for this king that went to the war in the first book. He has another reason for doing that. There's also magic in this world. And yeah, it was all in all a very enjoyable series. As I said, I own the first 3 books, and I will probably be buying the last 3 ones as well, because this is a series that I might potentially want to reread sometime in the future. But yeah, basically, I think that's it. What I wanted to tell you about these books. I also owned the first book of the spin-off series, The Fallen Kingdoms, which is a book of spirits and thieves. But I decided to just not get into that one because there are only 2 books out and it's supposed to be a trilogy, and the third one apparently was never published. So I don't see the point of me, picking that book up and never actually getting to the end, because the third book is clearly not going to be published. So yeah, so I'm not going to do that. If at some point that changes, I might actually pick it up. But yeah, until then, I'm not doing that. So yeah, so that was my January reading. As I said, I really enjoyed myself, and yeah, hopefully the trend continues, and I will be as happy in my next wrap-ups and my next videos and all that. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what you have read in January, and until next time, see you then. Bye.